All right, let's get right into it. If you're a new technician and you're about to dive into the world of manual transmissions, then you're in the right place. We're going to break down the 5 absolute must-know principles you need to master. And this isn't just a bunch of theory, right? This is your actual blueprint for success.
So, let's kick things off with a big question. You ever wonder what really separates a great technician from just a good one? I mean, it's not just about being able to turn a wrench, right? It's something deeper. It's about a whole different level of understanding and having a solid, systematic approach to every job.
And that is exactly where this comes in. See, it all starts with having a blueprint, a solid plan. This is what gives you that rock-solid foundation you need to diagnose, to repair, and to really master the, let's be honest, pretty complex world of manual gearboxes. It's your game plan, your strategy for being great at this.
All right, so here's what our blueprint looks like. It's broken down into 5 key parts. We're going to start with mastering power and flow. Then we'll cover why safety is absolutely non-negotiable. After that, we'll dive into decoding the internals. Then we'll get into the art of diagnosis, and we'll wrap it all up with why precision makes perfect. Let's jump in.
Okay, point number 1, mastering power and flow. This is all about understanding the why before you even think about the how. I mean, think about it. You can't really fix something if you don't truly get how it's supposed to work in the first place, right?
So, at the very heart of all this is one key concept, the gear ratio. This is the magic, really. It's the core principle that lets a transmission take the engine's power and either multiply it for a powerful start or reduce it for efficient cruising on the highway. It's all about getting that torque just right.
So to really get a picture of this, let's follow the power on its little journey through the gearbox. Okay, so it all starts coming in through the input shaft. From there, it jumps over to the countershaft gears, then the main shaft gears make a selection, and boom, power goes out to the wheels through the output shaft. That's the basic path from A to B.
So why does this really matter? Here's the deal. You can't possibly diagnose a fault if you don't understand that power flow. It's just not going to happen. In your assessment, you're going to have to pinpoint faults in 2 completely different transmissions. So this knowledge, it's not optional. It's literally the only way you'll know if you're dealing with, say, a bad input shaft bearing or a chipped countershaft gear. Big difference.
All right, let's get to our second point on the blueprint, and trust me, this one is huge. Safety is non-negotiable. We have to be crystal clear on this. Your most important tool, it's not in your toolbox. It's a safe workshop, period. And to put this into perspective, just think about this number for a second. 30 to 60 kilos. That's what a typical manual transmission for a light vehicle weighs. That is heavy. It's awkward to hold, and you're usually wrestling with it under a car in a really tight space.
Now, what happens if you mishandle that kind of weight? Well, the risks are no joke. We're talking about serious crush injuries, spinal damage that could last a lifetime, or even knocking the whole vehicle off its supports. The stakes here are incredibly, incredibly high.
And this is exactly why this stuff matters so much. During your practical assessment, you are going to be physically removing and refitting a transmission. So following those safety procedures for lifting and supporting it correctly, that's not just about ticking a box to pass. It is your literal defense against a serious, potentially life-altering injury.
Okay, time for point number 3, decoding the internals. This is where the fun really begins. We're going to go deep inside the gearbox and really get to know all the little intricate parts that make the magic happen. Everything from synchros to shift forks.
So, let's start with a key player, the synchro mesh assembly. Now, the easiest way to think about this is like a tiny little clutch, but for each individual gear. That's its whole job. It uses friction to perfectly match the speed of the gear you want with the speed of the shaft, which is what gives you that nice, smooth, clash-free shift.
But here's where knowing the details becomes absolutely critical. A worn-out synchronizer ring? It makes this very specific crunch sound, but only when you shift into that one gear. Now, if you don't know what you're listening for, it's so easy to mistake that for a bad bearing. And just like that, you're heading down the completely wrong diagnostic path.
And this really gets to the core of it, doesn't it? You absolutely have to understand how a part is supposed to work before you can figure out why it's failing. Knowing the job of a synchro, or a shift interlock, is what lets you interpret the symptoms correctly. It's what turns a wild guess into an accurate diagnosis, and that's key to nailing your fault-finding assessment.
Now let's move on to our 4th point, which builds directly on what we just talked about, the art of diagnosis.
This is all about learning to listen. I mean really listen to what the gearbox is trying to tell you through all its different noises and shifting quirks.
So, when you're diagnosing, you're basically going down one of two paths. First, you've got your abnormal noise diagnosis. The questions here are simple. What is the noise, and when does it happen? Is it a whine? A crunch? Does it only happen in third gear? Only when you're on the gas? The other path is shift diagnosis. Here you're looking at things like, is it hard to get into gear? Does it pop out of gear? And again, under what exact conditions does it happen?
Look, a professional approach to this is anything but random. It's a clear, repeatable strategy. First, you find the right procedure from the manufacturer. Then, you do a structured road test to actually replicate the problem. You systematically check all the conditions, compare what you find to the official specs, and, this is crucial, you document every single thing.
So here's why that matters so much. Most faults in a transmission are picky. They only show up under very specific conditions. You might have a whine that only happens once the gearbox is fully warmed up, or a crunch that only happens on the first shift of a cold morning. A systematic road test is the only reliable way to find and confirm these kinds of faults. And yep, you guessed it, documenting that whole process is a required part of your assessment.
And that brings us to our fifth and final point, the one that ties it all together. Precision makes perfect. When you're working on transmissions, the difference between a successful repair and a total failure can literally be a fraction of a millimeter. It's that precise.
This is what that precision looks like in practice. You're not just swapping out old parts for new ones. You're measuring everything. So take a look here. The clearance on this synchro ring, we measured it at 0.4 millimeters, but the spec says it needs to be at least 0.6. So that part's a fail. It's no good. On the other hand, the gear end float is 0.2 millimeters, and the spec allows for anything between 0.1 and 0.25. So that's a pass. That part is perfectly fine.
And at the end of the day, this is what it's all about. Understanding and respecting these super tight tolerances is what keeps that car from coming back a week later with the exact same problem. This skill, the ability to measure, compare it to the spec, and make the right call, is what makes you a true transmission repairer and not just a parts changer. There's a reason this is a core skill you're being assessed on.
So as we wrap this up, I want to leave you with one final question to think about. Every time you walk into the workshop and you follow this blueprint, you use your knowledge, you prioritize safety, you work with precision, ask yourself this: are you just building a repair, or are you building a reputation? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me.